right, what's going on there, boys? Quick intermission. I was editing this Large Lads to get it put together to upload for you guys. And I was like, all right, nice. Everything's put together. I decided to give it a quick rewatch before I render it. And I was watching the intro. I was like, one of those clips looks familiar. That's not good. And I do some click-clacking on my computer. And the prison lifting weights clip in there, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's the Aryan Brotherhood. Do some click-clacking on my computer. Yes, it most definitely is. For those of you who aren't American or don't know, that's a white supremacist prison gang. And I texted Sterling. I was like, dog, what the fuck are you doing? What are you trying to do to my podcast? He was like, what? And I explained it to him. And he's like, oh, I just found that as like a random clip of like guys lifting weights in prison. I thought that would be good for the intro. So I'm leaving it in there. But we're not dog whistling, you guys. We're just dumb.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Large Lads, episode 40. With your host, Max Sheether, Sam Sheether, a Big Dog Klong. We'll get right into it. Honestly, a miracle that this episode is happening. I played Oblivion for like 10 hours yesterday. So really had to pull myself away from that to make this episode happen. So you guys are welcome. I did the show that I host.
The Oblivion remaster might have been the thing to break the streak, but we've survived.
I planned for it in my head. I had to be like, all right, I know I need to carve out 2 hours to do Large Lads on Sunday morning before I can go back to playing it. I've never played Oblivion, but Skyrim is my most played game. I think I've probably sunk 5,000 hours into it. Has derailed training quite a few times, so trying to not let Oblivion. I played Oblivion for 4 hours. I went and I squatted 670 for 5, and then I went back and played Oblivion for like 10 more hours.
Based.
That was a chill day yesterday. Getting into it. Tips to get out of a training funk or like spice up your training. I know, Kirsten, you've had some moments in which training has gotten a little less fun for you. Mm-hmm. What are things you've done to make things more fun or get out of it?
Let me think. Changing up music.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of
just the vibe.
Yeah, that's a silly one, but thinking about this kind of ties into a later question, but like changing what you're thinking about during the sessions, because a lot of the time when I've gotten derailed, I feel like it's when I'm too focused on my medium or long-term goals and not focused enough on each session or my short-term goals. So kind of changing becoming more process-oriented has been really helpful. But that's more of a big picture. Yeah.
The music is a really interesting note because Sam the other week was like. His note for Big Saturday was like, have fun training, because I get like very nervous, and he was like, just make sure like it's an emphasis to go in and have fun. And I like was training like Big Saturday obviously, and I was like, I'm not like feeling like getting angsty, and I just put on like some like Asia, like some fucking some like Journey, and I was like, this is kind of the vibe for today. I don't need to force being angry to get hyped up. Yeah. It's just about bringing like energy. That's a very good note that I didn't even think about. That like you can just change the vibe of the session as long as you're still going hard. It doesn't need to be like the same thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you're getting like a funk with like a specific lift or like a specific muscle group, I think finding just videos that get you jazzed on the idea of that session and get back into watching those before you had to watch them, right? Like if you're just someone who every time before you train legs, you're not really sold on the idea of leg days.
Yeah.
Find a video of a lifter that you're like, this is badass, and by doing this, I'm moving a little bit more towards this person I think is cool, right? Like whether that's a weightlifter you think is cool, whether that's a bodybuilding leg day, like old Tom Platz footage, just get something that kind of gets you jazzed on the idea, so you really kind of get why you're there, is you're moving towards this thing that you think is cool, right? We're all just trying to do stuff we think is cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to resell yourself on why exactly you think it's cool.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing I think could apply to like a whole training slump, right? When you're kind of mentally checked out, is like think about like watch some videos of what you think is cool and just start from like almost restart into it a little bit, right? Like instead of continuing where you left off, kind of start anew mentally, I think can be just a good way to like get your feet under you, become mentally present in the sessions.
Yeah.
Something like that. But like the videos is a big one for me, right? It's just like finding videos of lifters I think are cool and watching those. Like that morning, maybe I'm training way later in the day while I eat breakfast, instead of watching some like fucking shitty YouTube slop video that I might have fallen into a rut watching. Yeah. I'm going to put on someone who's better at the lift I'm going to be doing later that day.
Yeah.
Or the body part that I'm training later that day that's jacked. And that just kind of preloads my subconscious to be a little bit more jazzed and a little bit more like, maybe I will do some alternating dumbbell curls. I haven't done those in a while. That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it looks cool when Kevin Lerone does it. that kind of thing.
I've had a couple of people message me about Big Saturday, and then they've just like tried doing that and like placing a greater emphasis on a session. And I think people have messaged me saying that that's been a great benefit to their training of just being like it was getting very boring having like what you described as like a flat week, and just be like, this is the big day, I have to make this one happen.
Yep.
And I think you can even do that within a day. Where like there have been times where I was like, my tertiary bench is like, I'm really not doing a good job, and so I was like, I'm just gonna come in and think about this as an overhead press day, even though it's the second motion of the day. Just like it's gonna make me prep more seriously.
Yeah, take a new, like the session's the same thing, but you almost have a new perspective on it.
Yeah,
you're like, I'm just getting through my main stuff. This is overhead day, because that's just gonna get like, it doesn't matter if technically overhead, it shouldn't be overhead day because your shoulders are the strongest muscle.
Absolutely.
But fuck, man, if it gets you reinvested in the session and prepping for it again properly.
Yeah, well, like the idea of like, oh, well, bench is actually the main focus. But it's like, if it's just like bench that I know I'm going to succeed at, and it's just more technique work. It's better to force myself to think about something that's going to make me sleep well, eat well. I'm going to come in way more prepped, and it's something I'm like fired up about. Or like, if you're like, oh, my back work is kind of like stalling, just change it to something interesting. It's all probably gonna have like a generally similar effect.
Yep.
And if it's something that you can get like really invested on and be like, yo, it's sick as fuck that I'm doing 4 plates on this T-bar row or whatever.
Well, and on here we've talked about like, you've got your certain things that you want to kind of put a lock on and leave it alone, but that's the perfect opportunity to go take a look at the things that aren't locked and change them up. Like your tricep exercise isn't locked. Sprinkle in some new tier 3s. If you don't have a lock on your tier 2, rotate to something similar. And that way you're kind of navigating your way through a session you've never done before, which forces some mental presence.
Yeah.
And also mental imagery. Are you trying to grab the mic?
Yeah.
I was just say the other thing, in addition to the videos, is mental imagery. Is like when I get tired, I do kind of, I've been doing this so long and I'm so hell-bent on getting better. Kind of the same as you, that like my checked out, I'm still checking the boxes.
Yeah, I'm still eating all my meals. It's just like, one of them was like,
yeah, exactly. Like one or two, like it might get, the worst we get is like 2 of them are improv meals.
Yeah.
The fuck am I doing eating 2 improv meals every day, right? Like I'm very serious about this. Go cook your food. It doesn't matter that you're fatigued. It doesn't matter that you're tired and don't want to cook. I really would like to get stronger. Go get your shit, get back. Like you and I will like find like, kind of slipped, or like the bedtimes have gotten a little bit too late.
Yeah.
And a lot of what gets me out of that is reminding myself to run through the mental imagery of that coming session of like, if I was a champion, if I was a stud, what would that session look like? How would I prepare? That starts now. So I'm doing that a little bit today. Like this is my second block on the new program. I'm a little run down, but way less than, I'm running the wave way better than last one. And I'm peaking out the fatigue. I think I will be a level of tired I'm supposed to be when I'm supposed to be it. But I am pretty tired, and I definitely have lost that level of clarity. And so today is my rest day. But instead of checking out, I'm like, my job today is to check every single recovery box that I can and be running through the imagery for tomorrow's session. Not just taking it as a granted that, I'm going to recover because I'm not training. I'm going to recover because I keep in mind my goals of tomorrow and what that whole session entails. And if I recover, I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z tomorrow. Like that's going to translate. So I've got a reason why I'm eating these meals. I've got a reason why I'm doing my cardio. I've got a reason why I'm doing my mobility, that kind of thing. And I think it often ties into my best periods is when I'm really, really consistent with my mental imagery, and my worst periods of training are when I'm not.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I've purposefully programmed in like a more focus on secondary and tertiary exercises for one of my clients, Sierra, because she loves pull-ups and dips. So her third bench day, it gets kind of boring to do 3 bench days a week that are similarly structured. So I give her like it's more of a technical practice bench slot. And then she gets to go ham on pull-ups and dips, and then there's like 1 accessory afterwards.
Well,
So
if she's doing the same work on bench, it might be 1% better.
Yeah.
But that effort probably overcomes it. You've had some stuff with like your training goals have been like, you've like lost motivation for those. And like reframing what you actually want to do in the gym, right?
Yeah, well, it's tough too because we go to a powerlifting gym, but I really like bodybuilding training. So it's hard for me to not lose the plot and become a powerlifter. I keep just becoming a powerlifter and then liking my training less over and over and over again. So I've been pretty decent about trying to focus on things that I genuinely want to train instead of just letting working at a powerlifting gym and training and coaching mostly powerlifters like pull me into wanting to be a powerlifter. But it's tough.
All right. Well, that would be my last answer. I think that kind of segues into, the whole willpower is directly proportionate to why power. the better understanding you have of why you're doing something, the more kind of mental resources you're going to have to make it happen. So that's why there is some benefit to, like, you know, you and I are different, right? You're a little bit more introspective with your training career. I'm very much day by day, trying to just do each day really well. There's benefits to both, but I think that introspection and, like, okay, if you're in a bad, like you, viewer, large lad, if you're in a bad slump with your training, I want you to sit down and be like, well, what is it that I want to get out of my training? Like, what really do I care about? If you're like, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with myself, I don't care about my squat. I want to have big arms. But your training is a squat program. Of course you're running into issues of mentally checking out. Of course you're not jazzed about your sessions. On some level, you know that's not the way to what you actually want. So if you first start with being really honest with yourself of, like, what is it that you care about? What is it that you enjoy? Those are the two things. And then your training should reflect that. It could be, I care about having fun in the gym and being strong. There's a program that you're going to dig if you adjust to it. You could say, I care about being strong, but I also want to be jacked. I don't want to give away a certain look. There's an approach that's going to let you do those two things well, and you're going to be proud of your results, and you're going to be jazzed to do them. I think a lot of that sometimes check out is when, on some level, subconsciously, you can feel there's a disconnect between what you're doing and kind of what you would find rewarding or what you want.
Yeah, we can move on to the next question, but I was just going to say, we had a little quick conversation about, like, having goals over different lengths of times. Where, like, I hit like a medium-term goal, and then I felt like it's like how people get post-meet blues. I feel like setting goals before you're even done with the meet is usually a good way to burn off, like, to stave off, like, burnout, because it's like, if that's the only thing you focused on, then it's just like, I'm now aimlessly, like, what do I do now? And I don't know. I felt a lot of success having, like, goals after already planned.
But I don't know if that's because you had goals after, or if that's this is something I talked to. I want to say it was Adam at the gym. We talked about this. Where he's like, oh yeah, man, post-meet blues is like a real thing. And I was like, I can honestly say, hand on heart, I've never had that once. Part of that's maybe a difference between me and you is I don't like competing.
Yeah, you hate competing.
I like training and I like getting stronger. That's like what I live for. It's like, my goals have never perfectly aligned with any sport.
Yeah.
I just want to be stronger. Like, stronger than I am right now and keep getting stronger. That's always been my goal, and I'll dabble in different strength sports, but, like, that's always been the goal. But that's also kind of led to some disconnect for me as well. It's like, what exactly am I doing?
Yeah.
All I know is that I really want to be stronger than I am right now, right? But I've never, ever had post-meet blues because I'm in the peaking phase and I'm pulling out assistance work. I'm itching. I'm like, I'm not building the base. I need to build the base.
Yeah.
There's nothing I could do at this contest that I'd be that happy with. I want more. And I know so I'm thinking maybe part of that, like, us being immune to the post-meet blues is how long we focused on base building and internalized that being more important than peaking.
Yeah, by the time we were done with a peak, we're both just like, I have been wasting time.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, I've displayed what my machine can do right now. I need to go back to building a bigger machine.
Yeah.
Whereas I think people who don't necessarily or, like, really internalize that kind of ebb and flow of, like, build the machine, express the machine, build the machine, express the machine, they see that they get stronger in the periods where they're lifting really heavy all the time.
Yeah.
And they think that's what it's all about. And they're like, I have to go back to hypertrophy. And it's like, no, you don't understand. That's so important. Like,
yeah, there's also some amount of just like me and you. Peaking is stressful.
Yeah.
You care as much about training as I think both you and I do. The idea of each individual session, like, this is going to ruin my whole week, if not multiple months of my life.
But a lot of the people I know that get the post-meet blues, even, like, they don't seem to be having a great time through their peak in meet prep either. Like, they clearly aren't enjoying it. But maybe it's that lift heavy every session. Maybe it's just like people like the idea of, like, it all pays off on this one day, and then that day is a bunch of adrenaline, it's this high, and then it's that contrast of you just go back to regular life the next day. Like, UFC fighters have talked about that, where it's like this ultra, like, you win a fight, and then you're super depressed afterward because just by comparison, normal feels bad.
We were talking about I can't imagine the feeling of losing a UFC fight. Like, because it's like lifting times a million.
But it could be years before you get another fight.
Yeah.
Like the idea of, like, the absolute hype of getting, like, a flashy knockout and, like, just running around. That's probably the highest high just about anyone. Like, I just made potentially millions of more dollars for hitting a spinning head kick. I've defined my career. Versus, like, if you have a clip that you're gonna get tagged on Twitter every day for the rest of your life. Just like waking up from being unconscious and having to be like, oh, I have to like walk out and do press now. That shit must be the worst.
They don't make them do press anymore.
Really?
Yes, yeah, that was. They used to have guys after they got knocked out still go do like post-fight press conferences and do post-fight interviews. They've stopped that. But I was gonna say one thing I heard that I thought was interesting was a lot of the guys that come from a wrestling background cope with it a lot better because you compete so much and you lose. Like a lot of them like weren't the undefeated guys, right? Like they've lost so many times, at least early in their wrestling career, that it's like. All right, now shit, back to work. I think there's an interview with Robbie Lawler. I was like, yeah, that shit didn't bother me that much. Like I've been losing semi-regularly since I was in middle school wrestling. Like I know what that's like. I can deal with
Ben Askren, kind of the same thing, because that guy got the worst. I might not be waking up the next day on Ben Askren. What is the best fast food sweet treat? I know that was low energy. I didn't sleep a lot from like Oblivion. I'm bringing it up, boys. Let's go! I rank the Oreo McFlurry
that was what I was gonna say.
extremely highly. Also, have you ever had the Stroop Waffle McFlurry?
No.
They had a limited release. Sam loves Stroop Waffles. They're like little caramel wafer. There's some European treat. Let us know, European guys, where Stroop Waffles are from. Fucking S tier.
I would say apple pie is a little underrated at McDonald's.
Really? Yeah. I've never tried one. I worked at McDonald's in high school, and I was like, these seem off-putting.
I will say one time I ordered an apple pie and they gave me that cherry crap and I was so mad. I'm not going back through the drive-thru, but I was pissed.
Dude, that cherry crap, get that out of here. Oh, you know what's a real pet peeve of mine?
I got a funny one.
Okay.
Me and Kirsten got Domino's last night for our game night.
Yep.
We played Mario Party. I lost badly.
Now, shout out to Nina, my beautiful girlfriend, for absolutely screwing me over and winning the game.
When we were at Domino's, some guy was there and he was like chewing out the guy at the front for like something. Something was wrong with his order, right? And like the guy was like, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna speak to my employee. Like the guy at the front handled it like a champ, very corporate. Was like, my employee should be doing that. Here's your refund, right? And the guy was waiting for his order to be remade. He was outside. I was nosy and curious. I was like, what was wrong with your order? I came up to him. And
That's crazy. I can't believe you did that.
I know, that was crazy.
That's wild.
That's
It's
so
bold.
out of
I was really curious.
Yeah.
I was.
I would ask the employee.
We were just I thought he might be more. I got like that was my read on it from their faces. This guy didn't actually seem very mad.
Yeah.
And the employee seemed more flustered by it than this dude.
Yeah.
This guy just seemed like generally annoyed.
Yeah.
Right. And I was curious. So I was like, whatever. If he yells at me, he yells at me. I'll take that one on the chin.
Yep.
And I was like, what's wrong with it? And he was like, he basically explained that. He ordered some of those like with the garlic knots or something,
Yep.
and they've got cheese inside. And he's got a 2-year-old who can't eat that. That's not safe. And I was like, "You're feeding your 2-year-old garlic knots from Domino's?" Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, brother. That is a safety hazard.
I feel like the real defining of why I am who I am today. A classic McDonald's story is our dad, whenever he went to Lowe's, would always buy me a White Monster in McDonald's.
Yep.
When I was 7 years old, he would buy me a full White Monster and get me a double quarter pounder with cheese. I swear to God, that's
how you got so big.
That's why I'm large. That's why I'm so light.
I didn't know that. That's the least surprising thing ever, though. Your dad is like #1 White Monster fan in the entire world. Probably.
He'd also hide it from my stepmom. He would be like, we have to drop the bags off at the neighbor's house.
That's fair.
Because we can't show her that we got fucking McDonald's.
Yeah, our pop, 2 to 3 White Monsters a day.
He's trying along.
He's a champ.
That's a resilient heart for a man with horrible insomnia.
Still alive. Many shades of red. Doesn't sleep. Cranks White Monsters all day, baby.
Sam didn't have an answer.
Can still drive that baby 300 yards.
What's your sweet treat?
Shit, I don't know.
Milkshakes?
The Five Guys Oreo one.
I was just saying, my real pet peeve, I hate a milkshake that's too thick.
Like the Five Guys one where you can't fucking drink it?
It's not a milkshake anymore. This is just like weird, goopy ice cream.
Here's a hot take.
All right.
Blizzard's wildly overrated.
Okay. I can't. Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's not that much better than a McFlurry, and a McFlurry is 1,000 times cheaper. I also don't want that much.
Yeah.
Blizzard is so much, even a small one.
Yeah, I don't know. I never really get like I don't get the tasty treats. Usually if I get fast food, it's because I'm like trying to pencil in like one approximately 6 meat units.
Yep.
So like, about 50 grams of protein.
Yep.
That's usually all I'm trying to do is just like check off that box on my time intervals.
Yeah.
Because like when I was in college, I was really struggling to put on weight, and I identified that like frequency is king. I'm never going to be able to eat enough in 3 meals consistently to put on weight. I need to eat 4 times a day was at first, and then it was 5. They could be one of them could be kind of a bullshit mailed in fake meal, but I need to eat 5 times. And that helped me keep my body weight up and not going down. And it potentiated my training really well. And so that became my like really simple box I have to check is like 5 feeding windows.
It's kind of fucked up for us to be asking a sweet treat question and you explain your fucking strict ass diet.
It's not strict.
This is so fucked up.
There's nothing strict about it. I was saying I could eat whatever, but I'm
I
just
was
saying
really
like
disappointed I eat 5 times. Dude, we're not asking sweet treat.
if I eat fast food, the point is to check off the meat units and get some calories. I don't usually get the sweet treats, so I just don't really know.
I will say Denny's Oreo McFlurry, it's like 2,000 calories. It's worth every one. So reframing training ideas. This was a conversation that Sam and I have had lately. My examples are kind of chasing the set versus chasing the effect of the set, which I think you've talked about on the channel before, where it's like doing this is like, I need to get 8 reps versus like, I need to work hard. Or like chasing the purpose of the session, where like the session isn't doing this singular set. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's just, I need to work my quads hard. It doesn't really matter as long as I work my quads hard. Or like warm-ups being like just getting warm versus like I'm prepping for a movement or I'm getting extra reps in. Where like if I'm doing, I don't know, 5 warm-ups, doing 5 to 7 reps, it's like that's most of the total reps I'm doing on squat. Those are reps that I can take advantage of to get like practice in. So like what are training ideas that you guys have reframed that I think that you feel have been productive?
Definitely the hypertrophy phase building volume is king, kind of it's not always about PRing sets in and of themselves, but rather can you accumulate a bunch of volume? And it doesn't even have to be more volume than last block if you change your technique to be cleaner. Because that's one that Sam has told me like a million times, but it took so long for me to internalize because I was like, well, if I did 50 total reps last time and I don't do 51 total reps this time, then I'm not getting stronger, which is not true. And even you can even expand that and say you could probably do the same number of reps for several blocks in a row and still get better each time, which is something that I have a really hard time internalizing, but it's a really important concept.
Yeah, especially because it's like the idea of solely chasing either rep or volume PRs has led me down a wrong path so many times because I'm encouraged to force it. Where like a clean set is more effective for my goal rather because I've done the same thing where it's like initially training career, I'm just like, I need to get this set of 8.
Yeah.
And then it stopped reaching a point where I could force the set of 8 every time. So like Sam was like, all right, we're gonna do like total volume. And I was like, all right, I have to force 31 reps or I'm a piece of shit. And then it was like, okay, forcing that is also still defeating the purpose if I'm just like skipping my pauses or whatever. Yeah. So it's like, I've hit plenty of PRs off of less volume the previous time because I actually paused my benches, and then when I went for a heavy paused bench, it went better.
Yeah, and I think that's something. It's such a logical thing to. Like, I try to skip people through that process, and usually they have to prove it to themselves.
Yeah,
it's like you start and you're like lift heavy to get good at lifting heavy, and you get stronger, and you're like I've got to figure it out, and then that stops working, and then you get this idea of like, hey, don't lift heavy all the time. Back away, build volume, re-lift heavy, and you'll make it a little bit further. Yeah. That battering ram analogy, pull it back, build some volume and some momentum, break through.
Yeah, trying to push a battering ram
instead of constantly knocking on the door, right? Like
just push.
If every week we're lifting like
come on, boys.
Yeah, it's just a push, and at first that works.
Yeah.
But at some point we need to start bringing it back, and you're like, okay, I get it. I need to do a base building phase. And logically that becomes like, okay, I'm gonna hit like 6 to 10 rep PRs. I get it. It's not just about the 1 rep PRs.
I need to hit 8, 7, 6.
I need to hit those like, that 5 to 10 range.
Yeah.
I should hit some PRs there and then re-push heavy. And that works for a while.
Yeah.
And then that stops working because you end up forcing progression by kind of fudging a 7 rep PR, but the form was kind of bad. And I think there's a time and a place for kind of forcing progression to learn how to push yourself hard. But usually that's like a periodic thing. The guys who constantly are trying to force progression just have this constant degradation of technique that leads them into some hard plateaus. So then you're like, okay, I can't just force my 8 rep PR. Then you move to what we talked about, which is like total rep PRs.
Yeah.
And you're like, hell yeah, I'm going to force some total rep PRs.
Yeah.
And that works for a while.
Yeah.
And then again, you start forcing shitty total rep PRs with poor motor patterns that don't translate as well to holding positions with heavy weights. And then you finally come to the end game, which is no, it's about building as much high quality volume as I can. If it's low quality volume, it's not worth building.
Yeah.
And you don't need to force a PB every time. It could be higher. You could match your PB total volume with a higher rep quality.
Yeah.
And that still constitutes the biggest base you've ever had. And I try like the same thing with Kirsch. Like, I don't hold it against anyone. I try to convince people. I'm like, stop touch and going for a 2 rep total rep PR. It doesn't matter. Pause them, please.
Yeah.
I'd rather say you come 1 rep, 2 reps shy, but with a really nice technique. Like you've stopped forcing it at all. You're like, no, I'm just gonna do 3 good sets. Like if it's there, I'll take a volume PR.
I just don't have any volume PRs that I pay attention to because I'm just like, I know the intensity that Sam wants me to hit. I know the form level. The whole like understanding the point of the session, I feel like can be an abstract idea if you're like haven't been lifting for a little while, where it's like, oh yeah, this is leg day, right? And it's like, it can be as simple as just like, oh, I work my legs today, but like Big Saturday is my example. It's like my primary set is like work hard, don't let this much technique break down, and then my back down stiff legs, I was like, there's a certain level of soreness that I want to reach. And I'm starting to get a good idea of what I need to do. So I dropped the weight a little bit because I was like, I'm already a little bit fucking sore. So I'm gonna drop that back a little bit because I don't want to overdo it. And so like understanding like where you want to be for different phases is a very weird training idea that like you're not gonna figure it out off the bat. It's gonna feel wrong and bad, and you're probably gonna mess it up. Like there have been times where I've been like, oh, it's going great because of my bench, and I understand that's the point of the session. And then I was like, I haven't been working my triceps very hard. That's not the actual point of the session. Isn't just bench volume.
Yep.
Like you'll misunderstand what the point of the session is. But I think just like trying and learning is honestly the bigger part, rather than like off rip just being like, I understand all the levels of training.
Yeah, well, that's, people talk, like, I'm not going to harp on this one too much because you can find it all over the place if you're in this kind of sphere of YouTube.
Yeah.
A bunch of guys made the video like, stop trying to figure everything out before you do. You're never going to actually authentically understand any of this stuff until you do.
Well, you got on a new program and you were just like, I was like, what are your thoughts? And you're like, I haven't even done a full week. It doesn't I don't have any thoughts.
I can't have any thoughts, right?
Like I haven't learned how to do the program.
Or like people be like, this program is flawed, this, and they haven't run it. And it's like, well, there's some understanding of how to run it that comes with doing it. Just throw yourself in, be conscious, be thinking, but stop just like researching to hell's end and be like, I'm going to fully understand strength training before I take it seriously.
Yeah.
Start taking it seriously is the only way to authentically learn, right? But back, the original question was like training concepts. Maybe we've changed.
Like reframing, yeah.
One thing I've been kind of entertaining a lot more recently is that some accessories should be pushed less hard.
Oh yeah, we talked about this.
Yeah, there's some things that I think should be done fairly easy for sets across, and then put on a very slow overload protocol of like you add 1 rep to each of the sets until you reach this, even if you could have done several more. So it's this very slow background progression that's kind of automated. And your job is just to keep up with that automated, not to push it ahead as fast as you can. So if you had a lifter with adequate ab strength, I would love to not see them kind of burn the boats and get like to really tire themselves out going life and death on ab sets. I would rather see them start at something really quite easy and then put it on a very, very slow automated progression and just be consistent with doing that in the background for a long time until it reaches the point that it's pretty hard. And then I would like to see them strip it back and re-put it on the same forward progression or pick a different ab exercise.
I got a question for you. Do you think that is probably more true because we're lifting like more total heavy weights, where like obviously 1 set of squats is extremely stimulating for me because it's 670 for 5 or whatever. If I was doing 370 for 5, it would be a different amount of stimulus. I'd probably be doing multiple sets at the exact same intensity or whatever. Do you think that that's more true, that like, oh, we have really limited training economies that we have to use better, so it's like don't sink something on that? Or do you think that's solely just like, even for an earlier lifter, this thing doesn't need to be that much stronger? There's no point to put like that training emphasis into it? We're like, you're not going to burn yourself out on calves even if you're pretty weak, right?
Yep.
But it's just like, I'd rather put that focus into your quads if your calves are already way stronger than they need to be. This just needs to be something there for ankle health or whatever. Is that kind of...
Yes, that's a great question. Because you and I firmly believe that what we did is kind of the move, which is going to try to get really strong at everything you do in the session.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't fatigue be damned. You're not strong enough to really worry about that too much if you're on top of your recovery variables. Stop worrying about SFR so much and try to get strong at everything. Both of us kind of believe early training career win because SFR is a ratio, stimulus to fatigue. Stimulus to fatigue ratio. But that means it's a ratio. So if the stimulus, if the stimulus of your 150-pound squat set, that's pretty low stimulus, it's also low fatigue.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if the ratio is unfavorable, right? Whereas the stimulus to fatigue ratio of doing 675 for 5 on your squat, it's very stimulative, it's very fatiguing.
Yeah.
And we have less resources to work with after that. So maybe the more strong guy has more of these things that are put on this background, easier, slow burn progression. Like a perfect example would be Jesus.
Oh, well, he's doing one set and then everything else for the rest of the workout.
It's quite easy, right?
Yeah.
Like, no disrespect to Jesus. I don't think he's doing anything wrong. I don't think it's, this freak is getting away with it. No, Jesus has a very good training IQ. Very good.
I don't keep up with his YouTube videos super often, but holy shit, he has some really good in tune, just this is too many sets, so I'm just not going to do them.
He's got a good
and
feel
I feel
for what
if
he
I
needs
was
to do.
a lower level lifter or someone who's not, I'm not Jesus Oliveira's level strength, but I'm a fairly strong dude. I understand, I was that's so smart. I am not that good of an athlete sometimes that I would still force a set. That you have to be that level of open to be that level of strong.
Yeah, he's not just strong, he's a good athlete.
He's just skipping sets. That's bum.
Yeah.
And it's that's following a program better than the program is written because it's I understand the point of this. This is too many. Or then he just does all of his accessories that are just stay healthy, which is the whole point
exactly.
of being that strong.
They're not about necessarily being that hard. People be like, you're not getting the involuntary slowing that we would like to see for good hypertrophy sets. Yeah. They're almost more to keep healthy sets.
Yeah, because he's 880 for 8
they're
on
almost
squat.
active
He's
recovery.
done all he needs to drive.
Exactly. So you'll see Jesus will hop on the adductor, abductor. He'll hop on the calf and the tib raise. He'll do some leg extensions and some hamstring curls for across sets. But no one of those sets, that's one of the strongest humans to ever live. There'd be a lot of plates on each of those machines if he was really sending it to very close to failure. Yeah. But it's more keep healthy, keep in touch with those muscles, keep your kind of neural connection with those muscles really good. Yeah. I think it would be a mistake to push those things harder. I don't think he's doing something wrong.
The quick training's fast.
Very similar with Ray Williams would work up to his heavy squats and then run this gauntlet of machines, but he's not going life and death on those machines. He actually kind of is training to moderate discomfort people meme about. And then in that scenario, I think that's appropriate. Yeah. Younger trainees, don't do that. Send your leg extensions. Send it on these things.
It is very funny.
You didn't have the 1,000-pound squat stimulus beforehand. Yeah. Go hard. But I still think there's some things where it's if it's ahead of the curve, putting it on this, to get to your question, right? Putting it on this slow progression is a great idea, right? I noticed the Sika guys, they put a lot of stuff on these kind of slow, deliberate progressions where they're your kind of hypertrophy stuff's kind of whatever. I've heard them describe it as boring. And I'm if you're sending it, you wouldn't really describe it as boring. You would describe it as hard. Yeah. But I always thought it was interesting when people describe their assistance work as boring. Yeah. Because I was the way we've always historically done most of our assistants couldn't be called boring. Yeah. But if it is this I'm going to do 8-8-9 and then I'm going to do 8-9-9 and they're all kind of easy, I could see that being described as boring. But that's also because they're training for so many qualities that it's almost like they're doing that monster 800 squat beforehand. Because it's if you have to work on your snatch, your clean, your jerk, your sprints, and your squats, and these are the things that none of those can be mailed in. All of those things require and some plyos. Yeah. All of those require max intent. And it's wow, we have chewed through a lot of fatigue. Yeah. That does kind of relegate maybe our single leg work. They're not going ultra heavy on their Gurf has strong legs. Yeah. He could be doing 665 squat. Yeah, he could be doing some monster split squats if that was the intent. But no, you can see that it's very much this slow background thing that's just enough to adjunct to make his squats higher quality. Yeah. His abs, they're not that near failure. They're just enough to adjunct higher quality squats, and they're slow and progressive in nature. So I think there's a time and a place for a lot of people, especially if you're man, I'm the ab guy, my abs are strong. Maybe just put your abs on a slow burn in the background.
It's very funny because it's progressive overload is the name of the game, right? Maintaining is sometimes also the name of the game. Because there was a point in which my hamstrings were, I would say, stronger than they probably needed to be in comparison to my deadlifts. And then I stopped doing them because I was an idiot. Because we rotated out. We're upper back is more of a priority. I wish I had just done stiff legs at the same weight and just stalled them. Like it would have been really easy, low training economy because I'm not progressing. I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, but it's enough just to keep something at baseline and then just do my upper back work probably just as hard because I like had the training economy rather than just be like, I don't need this. Or if I had been forcing it, that's probably it's also a negative thing because I would be training something that doesn't need to be like, I don't need to be dedicating a bunch of training economy to pushing my stiff legs if they're already a strong point or whatever.
That was something Sam was one of the first things Sam taught me when I was learning to program was like, if something is a strength for someone, keep it a strength. You don't have to overemphasize it, but don't pull it out.
Yeah.
Like I have several clients who have like female benchers with really strong shoulders. And I was like, so if their incline's really good, then we probably shouldn't do more incline. And Sam's like, no, you gotta like
do one set. Like,
keep something in one time a week. It doesn't have to be like all the time, but don't let it regress because then it sucks. They're like, oh, I used to have really strong shoulders. And then you come back to it, realize your shoulders will be added back in. They're like, well, shit, I've gotten worse at this. That sucks.
Yeah, partially because it's a training investment and also just like, I just have naturally very, very strong shoulders. I just over-press better than I bench. And Sam and I've just been like, we do one set. We at no point ever need to do more than one set of shoulders. So it's just like at some point during the week, we'll find one set and that's enough. My overpress is stronger than it was 6 months ago. I don't need much more to progress it than that because I'm doing a lot of tricep work, because I'm doing a lot of other things to build it. But it's like that's just like enough to get the effect we want. There's no reason to do any more than that. Mm-hmm. Next question. Kind of, I feel like on topic, how to bring up a lagging muscle. You guys are coaches. I feel like you guys probably have very different thoughts than me on like, if someone does have like a large deficit, like what are things to avoid or things that like you think would greatly benefit them like bringing that up?
Well, I guess we'll start with what would be non-coach, just athlete.
Yep.
If you were just kind of left to your own devices.
Yep.
Lagging muscle, what do you throw at it?
I usually, if you watch my accessory video, obviously that's a very simplified version of how to think about accessories. I just thought it's like a helpful framework that you and I have kind of come to. My tier 2 movement is whatever that is harder on that muscle. I'm also like, my frequency might be slightly up. I think that was my hamstrings right now are weak because I dropped them, and I've been trying to catch my hamstrings up to where they should be for multiple years because my deadlift has still been progressing, which is a little concerning to me. Like my hamstrings are weak and my deadlift is going up. We were doing one set of stiff legs because my back is limiting, and so we added back extensions also because it's something I think I can do earlier, like on the same week, without it being like horribly interfering on my like primary training day. So like I feel like it's like conceptualizing how you can fit it in there. I am like just like fit as much as I can. I don't know if that's actually a great way to do it, but like if I have like a really severely lagging primary muscle group, that is like actively dangerous to me. Really need to catch that up. If we were like, we've identified my abs are weak, right? I don't need to suddenly be doing 10 times the amount of ab work. It's just place a little bit more emphasis. Like just be conscious, I need to hit a rep PR this week. So I know like how big of a deal it is for it to be that weak. Like understanding if this is like that big of an issue for like me as an athlete. Hamstrings being super weak on my deadlift, insanely concerning. Probably number one training priority for me right now on 2 days of the week. My abs being weak right now, which they also are, just like, we have enough ab training in my week. I don't think there's like that's too little. Just place a little bit more emphasis.
I think that's a really good point. That would be the first thing that comes to mind. And I've taught this to Kirsten with like in-person athletes. The first thing you need to do is, assuming you have like a pretty well-balanced program that's already addressing these things. It just still seem to be lagging behind. The first thing I do is I just communicate with the athlete that this is lagging.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you are dead tired, you had a rough day at work, your kids kept you up, and you're gonna sandbag some of your stuff.
Yeah.
Just make sure you don't sandbag this one. No matter what, rain or shine, I want you to bring a little bit more effort to your abs.
Yeah, well, like if you're a really quad dominant guy, it's like you can sandbag your leg extensions. If you're coming in super tired, 10-hour day on the work site, just do your hamstrings and then just like sandbag.
Exactly. Like, so first thing is like, you don't even need any interventions other than just hey, let's get on the same page that this is behind and get you to have a good mentality instead of being like, I'm a poverty bencher, time to go mail in my bench day.
Yeah.
Be like, no, I'm a poverty bencher. If there's one thing I'm going to make sure I always give a big effort to, it's my bench, because I need to bring that up.
Yeah.
So it's like, if we can make sure that you're on the same page, that A, this is something that's lagging, and B, really rain or shine effort is step one. And then step two, again, no programming changes, no volume changes, is execution. Because assuming you're running a well-run program, you are already doing like a usable amount of ab volume.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing 4 sets. If I just don't try on them and they slack behind, then I can re-ramp it. You've really reframed my answer to be better than I think it was.
No, I think you're right, because you were just like, the abs was the perfect example. They're already in the program, and in your case, you already have the execution.
Yeah.
But the effort wasn't high enough, right? And that's all we need to change. Or some people, the effort is good. If someone's been like, I've been going hard on my abs, and my hip flexors get sore afterward, and my abs still feel weak, then it's like, oh, okay, but we don't need more shitty training. We need better training. So then we revamp. We either change the exercise selection, or we really reevaluate, like teach. Like the abs don't move your whole torso upward. Your abs shorten the line that goes from your rib to your pelvis. That's all your abs do. They don't sit you up, right? So it's understanding that we're trying to make that line as long as possible against load, as short as possible for reps. The hamstrings, it's all about like displacing those hips backwards. And if we round our back, that's no more length to it's like a lot of the time there's a conceptual understanding. I feel bad because I'm always looking at Max. And I'm in the middle, but usually there's a conceptual understanding of the movement that's a little bit wrong, because you're already doing adequate volume. It's just adequate shitty volume. So it's like, teach, what is the fundamental of this? I always say like pec. It's about pull in, feel the pec fibers stretch, pause at the point at which if you went any further, you'd feel that coming from front delt fibers. So load into a big stretch of the pec fibers, pause, drive out. And if you can master that mechanic, you can develop your pecs indefinitely. Hamstrings is all about just like a little bit slower negative, big stretch, drive out. Back stays neutral. There's these different tenets to different muscles that you just need to kind of restart and understand what it is that the muscle does and how to effectively train it. And maybe it comes with using less weight, even though we're trying to build up a lagging muscle. And then we just keep that training load adequate.
I was also going to add that we've talked a lot about like addressing it with tier 2 or tier 3 things. Sometimes you can address it as well on your primary stuff, especially bench is the most obvious example. I feel like if you have weak pecs, you just tend to keep running away from it by touch point lower, more shoulder, more tricep style bench. Sometimes you can just have somebody bite the bullet and do a little bit more pec dominant, make them pause their benches, do more thinking about opening up the pecs. You don't even have to change grip width or anything. And that can make a huge difference in a really short amount of time.
That's a good point, like a volume phase where it's just like that,
it
I
doesn't
have
matter.
good points where I'm like, I'm underusing my pecs. I'm doing 15 sets of working sets on pressing right now. I can use those instead of just, because I do sometimes just like, I accessory my way into fixing that. I have a bunch of working sets that I can just choose to I'm under anchoring my hips on deadlifts. I have a bunch of sets of deadlifts. I'll just do a better job of that. I don't need to solely hamstring curl my way into fixing that problem.
Or like squats, right? Where someone has weak glutes or their bottom position is, they're running away from it, squatting maybe to parallel or a little bit higher. Just stop caring about, I know it's hard to, but like taking some weight off the bar, backing off way more than you would have and hitting good depth. You'll develop your glutes, your quads will get stronger, and then it'll kind of positively snowball into a better block usually, right? Because especially if you do a long enough block, by the time you get to the end of the block, you might have already beat your previous shitty 1RM with a better quality 1RM, which you wouldn't have been able to do to that standard at the previous block.
I think that that's a really good point.
Good point.
Good point in terms of like identifying the degree of weakness, where it's like if it's not that big of a deal, just like intensity in your accessory can probably be a little bit more. But like you said, it's like if it's like a meaningful difference, there's no point to not making your primary motion address the issue. We're like, this is a very bad thing for my bench for me to not be using my pecs. I'm just going to force myself, drop a little bit of weight, and just make all of my reps be a little bit more pec dominant.
Yeah, I think the bench is a good example, especially, right? Because it's like, weak pecs, you see the same symptom, which is as the set goes on, they touch lower and lower and lower on the sternum. Just don't do that. And then and that will be a great training stimulus for your pecs, right? Or like going from bouncing your benches to pausing. You didn't need any assistance work. Suddenly the bench volume that you're already doing is more developmentally potent. Same thing with like a squat. Squatting deeper, like your hips are weak because you squat high. It's a great exercise for your hips. Squats.
I remember when I was had like a really, really round back pull. I kept being like, how do I what are the cues that I need to fix this? And it's like, I just did all of my deadlift work with a super round back. I think the fastest, there's a Mike T video about this, the fastest way to fix it is just to only do flat back deadlifts. If you do that for a little while, that's the only way you're going to be able to know to pull. But no one wants to do that because they're going to be way weaker for a while, because it's if I only pull the flat back, I'm going to be taking 15% off my pull. But everyone wants to be able to either cue or accessory their way to fixing it. And if it's a big enough deal, you can just be like, this is the only way I'm willing to do this motion.
I will say, though, to the viewers, sometimes if you just try to cue it away and it's such a weak point, you won't physically be able to execute the cues, which has happened with me before, where Sam will give me a cue and I'm like, I just don't even know what you're saying or how to execute it, because I'm trying to do that, but it's not happening.
And then when I say it, it works.
Sorry. But also sometimes it's been just my upper back was just so weak I couldn't think about squeezing it.
Yeah.
So I just had to bring it up because I just kept getting frustrated that I'm I can't execute this cue. So sometimes you do, it's obviously you want to take a well-rounded approach, but sometimes that secondary work stuff, don't only focus on primary. It's a holistic approach.
And sometimes you just do an accessory movement. It's not even for that muscle.
Mm-hmm.
It's to mimic the cue, so you can get a little bit better at it. Do a lat pull down where your only goal is to mimic your back tightness on your bench press, just to practice it a little bit and be able to do it under stress.
Mm-hmm.
Or for me, at some point I got in my head that I really wanted to get better at spreading the floor when I squatted when I was in college. And the two things that helped was 3 days a week I would do X-band walks, because it's literally spreading the floor for reps. Mm-hmm. And then I would really focus on with one plate, spreading the floor. And eventually I got to the point where I could feel spreading the floor with 2 plates. And then I could spread the floor with 3 plates. And then I could do it with my work set, and it spiraled into having stronger hips. Mm-hmm. But the foot in the door, so to speak, was just doing the X-band walk 3 days a week. So I got just that feel of for repetitions of what even is this movement. Because like you said, sometimes you can have this great cue, and that cue is the way, but you have no ability to implement it with a heavyweight. You can only do it with your lightweights, which you should do, and maybe you should do some assistance that mirrors it.
We'll ask one last question. Timid lifter versus reckless lifter. Sam's talked about kind of the archetype of the person that you have to hold back or the person you have to push to do a little bit more. You guys are both professional coaches. That's cool. I seal tubes for a living, if you guys are curious.
I've been having a fun time with this because I have 2 clients right now, and one fits that archetype very well and the other fits the other archetype really well, and kind of developing systems that help those lifters do what they need to do. Whereas I know Sam has implemented in the past, giving people total rep goals, who tend to sandbag.
Yeah.
Be hey, last block you did this. No pressure if you can't execute it well, but just so you know. People who aren't super keeping track of their reps or won't look at the notes page to see what kind of rep PRs we have for them. So thinking about hey, do this, or on the other hand, the slow progression for people who tend to go yam on everything. Where my client more on the reckless side of the spectrum, for example, has really strong abs, and we've just been kind of cruising away at some ab work. In this block, I'm kind of her abs are plenty strong for what we need to do. So I'm gonna pull that back, put her on that slow progressing rep scheme.
Well, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this, as we give you examples of what it is specific, because you watch people at the gym, and I always say, you've got a very high athlete's IQ, and you're this person's kind of just doing this wrong. There's a basic understanding.
The clip of you and Bromley going, Max has a really high athlete's IQ and a really low coaching IQ.
Oh, I stand by that. I stand by that shit till the day I die.
Low coaching IQ is brutal.
I stand by that shit.
I don't even think that's true. I think I have a low coaching motivation.
I think from a programming perspective, or technical models that aren't your own.
I think I'm okay. I think I'm a lot better at that than I am programming. I have no sense to how to program anything that's not exactly how you program it. Because I think I could teach someone to do a squat that's good that doesn't look exactly like mine, or I guess deadlifts I have a little bit too much of a. I think I could teach someone to do a better sumo than I could teach them to do a conventional that doesn't look like mine.
Yeah, your technical model's more almost sumo adjacent in terms of most of the best sumo pullers are a little bit more extended through the thoracic than conventional pullers, and you extend a lot more than a lot of conventional pullers.
I'm convinced I could teach someone to do an incredible bench.
And
I've just put so much effort into trying to fix and learn how to bench that I'm like,
Oh,
dude,
but, like,
I'm a genius.
as far as the archetypes go, I think they have strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Like usually the timid lifter will have great form because they're always like, I need to get this weight better before I go up.
Yeah.
And they're always trying to form their way to new PRs, which leads to their form being like ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
You know, they might be an early intermediate lifter, but with like bottom end advanced form.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, if I can just convince you or like teach you what it's like to get fired up and push yourself on your like tier 2 stuff to build up your horsepower, your deadlift is going to rise and rise and rise, right? Like you always see someone with like a good deadlift technique and you're like, you're in the easiest position ever.
Yeah, we've talked about like that. It's like they're set up to succeed, but there's the roadblock of the thing that's put them in that position is not the thing that's going to take them to success.
Exactly. It's the effort, right? Which we kind of take for granted because we're like way too deep into this. It's like, of course I'm willing to give extreme amounts of effort to get stronger. I've spent way too much of my life working on this. Of course I'm ready to make that trade, right? It's more complicated when what stands between you and a deadlift PR is something more technical or more zoomed out. If you're like, oh, I just need to go hard on my RDLs, squats, and rows, awesome. That's the position I wish I was in. So we see those guys, we're probably a little bit on the reckless side of the lifter, right? And you know, but the timid guys have that pro. They always have this good form, and they are form first, which leads to them not having these really sticky plateaus that the reckless lifter gets, where they get to like, you know, we all know a guy who just round backed his way to like fucking 600 pull
and then
did it so fast, and he's been there forever.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you need to, like, you're running into the limitations of a poor technical model. You need to reevaluate, and you do need to form your way to a new PR. You've tried efforting your way through this, and maybe they just brute force, they stuck at 600.
Yeah.
And they brute force their way to 650. And then it's even more stuck.
Yeah.
It's like you're in an even worse position now because you're now emotionally tied to like being a 650 deadlifter. And it's such a kick in the pants to really strip back and build into a new technical model.
Well, like you're now not a 650 deadlifter.
You walk into the gym being like, oh, I'm a 650 deadlifter. I'm doing sets that are reflective that I'm a 650 deadlifter all the time. And you will not take that set, but you've painted yourself into a fucking corner at this point. And like you can see guys who are like so late stage chasing a shitty technical model.
Yeah.
But it's like the effort is so key. Like that's critical, right? And that's the psychology we like in lifters is like the guy who's chomping at the bit to go push himself. But at the same time, God damn, that's a big fault to being the all problems are solved through effort type guy.
That is very funny that like, that's a really good point in that like seeing the people that you coach and like, you know, people to varying extents fall on one end or the other, very rarely people perfectly in the middle off rip. That like the people who are like really chomping at the bit will have these truly brutal plateaus, and the people who fall more on like the timid lifter side are hitting really consistent 5-pound PRs and are really envious of the guy who's hitting these like straight up like I've seen people hit 50-pound PRs that I don't think it's like this is the greatest genetic freak ever. It's like this is a guy who just started with the most insane intensity of all time because he started in wrestling or whatever, like just knew how to work really hard, but then hit this like really hard like technique cap, and he's jealous of the guy who's hitting 5-pound PRs consistently. And it's both like there's neither of you guys are doing this like correct in a sense. And like I think when I started off, it's because I had no sporting background. I remember there was times in which like I would be doing deadlift sets and you were like, you just gave up. And I kinesthetically, I feel like I just gave 100%. And you were like, literally, I get like, if I pointed a gun at you, you could have done 3 more. And I was like, I just can't understand. Like, there was time where I'd fail reps, and then I'd just try again, and I'd get them. And like, it's just like, there is a thing of like, truly your mind is just like, believes that you can't do anymore, and you have to like kind of stubborn your way out of that. Because I started to like, very timid lifter, very scared to do a hard set of anything, right? Like was just giving up on an effort all the time. And like I didn't think I was giving up. I was like, that's just the most I can do. And then I swung really.
I wouldn't even call you, to be fair, I wouldn't call you a timid lifter. I would just call that being a beginner. People are really unfamiliar with pushing their body.
Yeah.
And some people just artificially never were a beginner because they were a beginner when they first started running suicides.
Yeah.
Right? Like that
learned how to do a hard sprint, knows how to do a hard squat.
Exactly. And they were failing those early sprints maybe. But they already went through that. I wouldn't even call that a timid lifter yet.
Yeah.
I just think that learning how far you can push past and through pain is just the quintessential beginner experience. I think you were a beginner lifter, and then as soon as you were a lifter enough to be classified, you were a reckless lifter.
Yeah, because I think I had to learn how to try hard, and it paid off. And then I was like, oh, I just need to try even fucking harder. And that really kind of hurt me later on because I did the exact thing that you described, where it's like I hit massive PRs and then was stuck because I refused to relearn how to do technique.
Would you agree that you've yo-yoed both ways now?
Like I've been overly timid at points?
Yeah, because you went by the time, let's just call it 17 was peak reckless lifter max. Hype and effort is the way.
Yeah.
That's the only tool I've got. Deadlift looked terrible, but was nasty strong. And then you were like, okay, I'm running into some plateaus.
Yeah.
I need to form my way to get stronger. And you formed your way to reach a higher level. And then probably took that one too far.
Yeah.
Where I was like, you're like, man, my technique feels a little off. I was like, and I was like, Max, your RDL is weak.
Yeah.
There was a point at which all of your deadlift assistance numbers were garbage.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the problem. I promise it's not if anything, you're technically a master. You need
That's
to
a very
get stronger.
funny thing
again.
is once you're down the technique road, you think of everything as being a technique problem, and it kind of is. We're if I did hit that deadlift slightly better in the groove, it would have felt better. But also that the issue is that I need to be in a perfect groove for it to feel good. If I'm just 10%, 20% stronger in all of my accessories, there's a lot larger of a margin for error for I can scuff my delts a little bit. I'm strong enough to pull this for 5 reps. I don't need to feel fucking perfect for it to be fine. But yeah, there's I think it was Bryce Lewis, who on his story was like, I find it a lot easier to coach a lifter who overshoots than a lifter who undershoots.
But I think that's probably also coach by coach, right? Because that's something Kirsten is learning this as well. So much of coaching, it's not this high-minded thing, but you are constantly looking for how to phrase things to get the most out of the athlete. If you're a coach that gives a shit, and it's I communicate with some of my athletes so differently than others, and it's just my athletes all know I'm an odd guy, right? They got to deal with that.
Strange man for sure.
But I don't think they realize how differently I talk to different athletes, and it's my best guess, and I've got a really good feel for some of them, how to communicate to try to keep them in the right mindset constantly, right? And I do my best. I'm really spread thin right now. It's been a big, honestly, thing that I've been kind of miffed about is I've got a lot of clients, I've got in-person commitments, and it's I'm spread a little too thin right now, and the amount I communicate with my athletes is less than I like, and it's really bothering me, but I still always make an effort to have a profile of what this person needs. Is this someone that always needs, I'm not going to give them technical advice.
Yeah.
They're already so analytical of that themselves. They just need me to gas them up. And be dude,
get after it today, brother.
Exactly.
Today, just conquer the weights.
Right? And it's I'm
They're the enemy.
And that's something that's maybe some coach, there's good coaches and there's bad coaches.
Yep.
And I never like talking about, bad coaches are this, because I think it's tacky, cheap, lame marketing.
Yeah, just try and make yourself sound like a good coach.
Exactly.
It's things that bad coaches.
If half of your content is just talking about these mythical bad coaches, I suspect you're fringe one of them, and you really need the demand. I haven't needed clients in years and years and years, right? So I've got no need to do this cheesy advertising of bad coaches do this. If you hired your coach, I hope you thought about it and really read into their stuff and talked to them and learned how they do stuff. You should really hard commit. And that's tough because sometimes there's guys who are hard committed to shit coaches, and I feel so bad for them. Right?
Yeah.
I feel so bad. I'm you're doing exactly what an athlete's supposed to do, which is almost you're trying to understand, but you've got this blind faith that this person knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm I see their stuff, and I'm this is shit.
Yeah, you can't client snipe, but it's just you are ruining a good athlete.
I know,
and
it's so tough, right? Because I never want to be you never want to be that person that steps on toes, and maybe you just don't get it. Maybe they built to that system because the athlete's really shitty, right? There's so many things again, that's a tacky shit coach move to tell a guy at your gym that his coach doesn't know what he's doing. If you hired me, you're a shit coach too. Get the fuck out of here, right? I hate all of that, but it's tough. But there's good coaches and good athletes that don't mesh even within that, right? It's all about having a synergistic pairing. I always say Thor and Sebastian was a match made in heaven, right? Because Thor was already winning all the moving events and odd objects, but wasn't statically strong enough. So this powerlifting coach that was very interested in nothing but super heavyweight lifting and their recovery curves and studied under the Lily Bridges was the ultimate mat pairing made in heaven.
But there are people who Sebastian would be a horrible fit for.
Exactly. If you're a guy who is like already a
Fucking
power
you.
lifter, yeah.
You would be a horrible fit for Sebastian trying to do strongman.
Exactly, because what I don't have is event-specific knowledge,
Yeah.
right? It's like he doesn't have that either, right? So it's like, and same thing with personalities. There's probably people that work quite well with these elite timid lifters. There's people that work quite well with these elite push themselves lifters. And you know, that's always something I think is interesting. Is like there's times there's athletes like I think I'm an okay coach. You know, like I don't try to toot my horn on here, but like I think I've coached 800 deadlifts now, right? Like
A
that's
couple
not,
of them from far too.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of your cooler accolades. It's like, when did Justin hire you?
I think Justin was like pulling 600.
That's
It was like,
that's a fucking accolade. It's like a
you know, and
true.
you were pulling 400.
That's a lot less than 4.
Yeah, and so it's like, you know, like, or like Jasper was squatting like 675, I think, when we started,
Yeah.
and he just hit 800 in a meet yesterday.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I feel like these are actually kind of rare. It's like 3 800 squats. Like, I feel like that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's guys who I think they're also good athletes. That like, it just wasn't a fit.
Oh, like we couldn't work well together. Just
Yeah,
like,
I just don't think we're gonna mesh.
it's not on you. It's not on me. It's just like a.
Yeah, there's a couple that I'm like, there's a couple athletes I've had that I'm like, good athlete. I'm like, fuck, I've learned so much since then. I wish I could try again.
Yeah.
Because I think the coach I am now, I think I've got some tools that could have expanded what I do outward to encompass what they needed.
Yeah.
But at the time, it just wasn't in my tool set. Even
Yeah.
though at the time, again, I still would rate that past me as a good coach, but it wasn't a good fit.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of like, fuck, I wish I could try again. And I've got a couple that I'm like, still to this day, I just don't think we're the right fit. And I don't mean that as like a backhanded thing at all. I just don't think it's a good fit. And I think I could point you to a coach that'd be a better fit.
All right, guys. If you want to hire Kirsten as your coach, Kirsten's looking for athletes,
Hello.
right?
Yes, I am.
Kirsten, a mentee of Sam under the Cheater training system. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let us know what got you out of your training funk. What's your favorite fast food sweet treat? Please leave a comment, leave a like, and subscribe. Maybe 7 in a row next week.
Kirsty's email is klong@sheathertraining.com if you're interested in coaching.
It was wrong in the descriptions for a minute there, so it is now correct.
Hundreds of people have asked Kirsten for